Welcome, everyone. This is Ensuring Success 2025, and this is the last session, the 14th session. We're so glad that you're here with us today. This is the 12th year that CPA Practice Advisor has been broadcasting this December CPE event. For your information, our hashtag is December CPE or also Ensuring Success 2025. We would love for you to be talking about us on social media. For those of you just joining us, in this conference, each session is a panel discussion, and we have a panel of well-known experts and practitioners, and they're sharing their real-life experiences, successes, and challenges. Each session is also interactive, meaning that you can use the Ask a Question box that appears on the bottom of your screen right under this window to send questions to us here in the studio, and we'll try to incorporate as many as we can into our discussion. In addition, if you're having any technical issues or problems with the program or questions about CPE, we have people standing by to answer you, or maybe sitting by. But anyway, up above our window on your screen, you'll see an email address, info@ensuringsuccess.com, and also a phone number that you can text to. So for any questions that you need to have answered by our tech people, you can use those ways to access them. Ensuring Success 2025 would not exist without the support of our sponsors, and they are ADP, Avalara, Canopy, CPA.com, Digits, eFile4Biz, Field Guide, Carbon, Count, WriteWorks, SafeSend, SureLink, ValueInsights.ai, Walters Kluwer, and Xero. We wouldn't be here without these companies, and we're so grateful to them. This session qualifies for both CPE and CE credit. There will be 3 breaks in the session. At each break, we'll display a 3-digit code. And when we display the code, you'll hear this sound. All right, and also with that sound, we have to drink a drink of champagne.
A glass with every bell. Wow.
A glass with every, yeah.
This game has already gotten better in the last
Exactly, yeah. So we're going to use that bell ring as a champagne reminder for us, and it's a reminder for you that a CPE code is appearing on the bottom of your screen. We'll do that 3 times during the session. So you'll want to record that CPE code, write it down. It's a 3-digit code, so you'll get 3 of those, 3-digit codes during the session. When you're ready to collect your CPE or CE credits, which can be right after this session is over, you can go to the CPE/CE credits menu item at the top of your screen, and there'll be an option to enter the email address that you used to register. If you didn't register yet and you're watching this session, you can register at that time. You'll be prompted to do that. So either way, once your email address is recorded in the system, then you'll be taken to another screen where you can click on the Claim Your Credit option. That will take you to a screen that lists all 14 of the sessions for this 2-day event, along with spaces where you can enter the CPE codes that you received during each session. And then right next to each session name, there's a button to click to download your CPE certificate. That button also applies if you want CE credit. So clicking that button puts your email address into the system to receive credit. And if you're getting a CPE certificate, you'll be able to download that right away. And if you're getting CE credit, that'll go right to us where we can record your information with the IRS. So this is the last session, and it is called, Alexandra,
Stand Up for Your Clients, Tax Resolution and Communicating with the IRS.
Thank you.
Like that is so easy these days.
I swear Dale didn't have any champagne before this.
No, not at all.
It's been a long time.
Before we get into the topic, we're going to introduce our panel really quickly. So we have with us Terry Lemons, Jim Buttonow, Vaughn Long, and our co-moderator, Alexandra DeFelice, and I'll have them each give a brief introduction to each other, to themselves. All right, Terry, you can start.
Well, Gail, I think after that long introduction, I think you deserve a drink of champagne. So.
I have to drink again.
Twist my arm.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, thanks for having me. I am a survivor of the IRS. I spent 26 years there. I retired in February from government. My backstory, my origin story, basically, I'm an old newspaper reporter and covered White House and Congress during the Clinton administration, and then the babies started showing up, and I ended up going to work at the IRS in 1998 and basically kind of worked my way up through the ranks and wound up running communications and outreach for the agency, a position I held for 12 years, worked with 6 different IRS commissioners, and I was one of those people behind the scenes. You didn't always see me or hear me. Occasionally you saw me in the media. But anyway, I kind of bring a little bit of an insider's view of the IRS to go along with our other 2 experts here.
Jim.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Jim Butnow, CPA. I have my own practice, my own CPA practice, but like my good friend Terry here, I spent 19 years, about a generation ago, with the Internal Revenue Service, ended that in 2006, and I've been in private practice, software development, and basically working with the IRS since then, doing a lot of publishing and such like that, helping a lot of firms work better with the IRS, which has been very exciting recently.
My name is Vaughn Long. I'm the owner of Tax Solutions Alliance, and I did not work for the IRS at any point in my lifetime. I was very fortunate to work with a former IRS collections revenue officer. He was there for 28 years. Terry, I think he left right before you did, so I don't know if the timeline worked out or anything, but not. And then he was in private practice for 18 years. We met each other along the way in private practice, and I was just fortunate to have a mentor who taught me the world of IRS collections. And we represent high-dollar individual clients. We do lots of business and payroll tax and trust fund issues and non-filer situations as well.
And I'm Alexandra DeFelice, co-moderator for the 14th time this year. And I do no work with the IRS. I just pay them money at the end every year with my taxes.
But you know where to go if you have a problem. Okay?
I do. I have lots of friends in this community.
At the IRS, there's a saying, we all work for the IRS at the end of the day. So.
And I just wanted to say, I already launched a poll question because we want to know which one of you are 14-hour warriors on this call. And we already have 418 people that have said that they are 14-hour warriors. So
outstanding.
I'm going to just keep this.
That's right. Cheers, right?
Cheers to all of you.
Some continuing education at the end of the year, right?
And then we may or may not get to them depending on the flow of the panel, but there are some actual quiz questions, again, related to some of the topics.
See how that goes. We'd like to kick this off with an important question that I'm sure all of you can answer in the same way, which is, have you ever had any issues with trying to contact the IRS? I'm sure the answer is going to be no. It's always been a piece of cake. But we're guessing that maybe the answer is might have had a problem here and there now and then. And with the fall changes, with the government shutdown and funding shortages for the IRS in the past couple of years, things have gotten even more difficult. Terry, you had the inside track on this for a while. What was going on and what's going on now, and how can we help ourselves in talking to the IRS?
Yeah, this is a really unique time in the history of the IRS. There are a lot of unique tidal forces that are coming to bear on the agency right now. First of all, back in the spring, I'm sure everybody heard about the staff losses at the agency. The agency has lost about 25% of its staff, and a lot of those people left had a lot of institutional knowledge. So on top of that, you had a lot of top leadership changes going on at the agency. We saw a series of people acting as commissioners, really unprecedented in the history of the IRS. And then you add in a couple of other factors. You had a major tax law change come in with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And then on top of that, you had a historically long government shutdown. So all of these pressures are coming together, and what you've got is a workforce that's incredibly dedicated, but the morale at the agency right now is very low. And for those of you who've been calling in, talking to some of the IRS assisters, you're probably getting a sense of the frustration. But I do want to say, if it's frustrating for you as a practitioner, it's just as frustrating as an IRS employee right now.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, and just what Terry's describing is extreme disruption going on at the IRS, right? And so you're looking at, Before, at the beginning of the year, the IRS had 103,000 employees. Now they got 74,000, a little more than that. They back to the numbers that they had in 2017 through 2019. I kind of always look, after the dust settles, I think that's where we're going to land, is how's the IRS operating like in 2017 and 19. But that's not helping us today, because we're seeing a ton of disruption. Thank goodness, during the shutdown, the IRS made a great strategic decision. Any of you who are tax practitioners out there, you could still file an authorization with the IRS, 2848, 8821. It would get recorded, and you could use transcripts, right, if you couldn't get a hold of the IRS. But the other thing the IRS did is they went ahead and they left their practitioner priority service line open. It was a little bit hard to get through to, but you saw the IRS, make some good strategic moves, maybe a lot of learnings, Terry, from 2019 shutdown that they put in play here. But you're also seeing the IRS growing with online tools, which makes it so that, and not a lot of us tax professionals are utilizing those tools and such like that, but a lot of shifting priorities with the IRS too. Basically the enforcement revenue that came from the Inflation Reduction Act is gone. So most of what we saw, leave the IRS was a lot of the recent hires when it came out of the revenue agents, right, which were doing the serious audits. A lot of the targets of the enforcement actions coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act. So should we expect to see less field audits? Absolutely we should, right? We've already seen a little tick down in 2025, even though the shutdown happened there for a few months. But our challenge, I think, for the next year, and we'll talk about some of the ways to mitigate these challenges here and best practices, is how do you resolve your client's issues when something comes up, right? Whether it be collection, non-filing, penalties, audits, which are very few and far between now, but how do you go ahead and work with them more effectively? And I think there's some best practices for us who do it every day, Vaughn, right? Like there's some best practices that we could share here today.
Yeah, I think, if we run through some of those things and you're navigating with the IRS, right? Like if you're looking to do some kind of negotiated installment agreement, you're first starting with the online system. If that works, and it doesn't always work, but if it works, that's a natural way it's going to progress through, but it's intended for lower dollar, single period situations. Please don't be sending in financial statements by mail. Anything by mail that you can avoid right now is to your benefit, right? Now, I was talking with someone the other day, they were trying to respond to a penalty situation asking for abatement, but they said, I just wrote a letter, and then I wrote another letter, and I asked, did you do the Form 843, the penalty abatement form, which establishes the whole process? Now, you still have to mail that, but writing a letter without the penalty abatement form doesn't do anything. It almost just gets lost in the shuffle, and someone's not going to contact you back and say, hey, you should have sent this if you can. So there's a lot of things mail-wise that you have no choice. A CP 2000 audit is all mail. We were chatting in the prep session of the frustrations of, we were saying it's got to be these days over 80% is, whether it's audit or collection, there's work coming through the mail, and trying to communicate that way is just a nightmare situation. Yeah,
you bring up, I think that is the problem areas when we're dealing, like Vaughn, you and I deal with face-to-face revenue agents for audits and face-to-face collection revenue officers, right? And those, you have a contact information. Maybe some of those people are gone. And one lessons we've learned here is that you better get that manager's name and contact information, because that person could be gone, right? So you want to find out status. You have the manager's contact information, but those are generally, you can handle those because you have somebody you can deal with. When you refer to the mail, and that, by the way, that's most of IRS compliance. It's done through one of its 10 service centers. They send out mass notices every year, over 200 million. We'll see this year again, right, of notices going out to taxpayers. Dealing with the IRS in that case can be very difficult, right? A lot of times your responses aren't tracked. You're missing the CP 2000 matching notice. When you respond in there, is it tracked? No, it's not. Well, you could use one of the online tools, which CP 2000s usually come with an access code, and use the online tools to go ahead and respond. But dealing with IRS campuses is going to continue to be frustrating. And again, using some of the best practices we talk about here today is essential. Knowing the procedures. Vaughn, you mentioned the Form 843. Send in a penalty abatement request without an 843. It'll ping pong around the IRS until eventually, sometimes, maybe it gets assigned, but maybe it doesn't, right? And so knowing procedures very close is very important in this day and age, just to make sure that you can follow the progress under what would be its normal operating procedures in a very time of disruption, right?
This is really going to add to the challenges for practitioners out there. National Taxpayer Advocate has described paper as the IRS's kryptonite.
Yes, kryptonite.
So true.
Yeah.
And, you know, to the point about the government shutdown, yes, there were people on the phones, but what was going on during the government shutdown was that paper was building up. So you're going to see more of a backlog there with the paper. So, you know, expect to wait longer to hear more on that.
Yeah, and back to that paper too, Terry, is as a tax professional, you can use the traditional mail and certified mail, but IRS gives you 2 electronic tools, right? They give you secure messaging if you're invited to do so, and that happens a lot in appeals. It's standard operating procedure if you're dealing with IRS appeals. If you're looking at things like CP 2000 as mail audit responses, standard operating procedure. If you get a 12C notice related to a math error notice, like for 8952 and advanced premium tax credit discrepancy, standard operating procedure to get an access code and use that secure messaging. The IRS actually offers a second tool, the document upload tool, right? The problem with this tool from us as a tax professional is this goes in and it goes untracked, right? So if it goes untracked, you and I know I want tracking on everything I send to the IRS to make sure I'm timely, right? So responding using that tool, IRS is seeing they're getting a lot of uploads, but it's a hit and miss, right? I don't know if it's going to the right place, if it's getting routed the right place and such. So use secure messaging whenever you can with that access code. That's an absolute best practice. Gets rid of the paper, it gets it into the IRS's work stream, will get worked quicker. Well, to the extent that paper's turned to digital, yes, it will. But for the most part, you want to stay away from paper, the kryptonite that the IRS has, if you can do so.
You're talking about appeals and you're using the secure messaging. Is that coming from a standpoint of I've got a live person I'm working with?
Yes.
If it's a correspondence appeal, you're not getting that option, correct? Or are you?
Usually, if it's a person, every appeals officer is given a 4-digit number, and it will come on the appeals. And actually, if you call them, they'll tell you, "Can you give me your number, your 4-digit number?" Right? And you can go into secure messaging. It's irs.gov/connect. And you go ahead and you can go through the workflow and you put in the person's 4-digit workflow, and what it will do is it will invite that appeals officer to start interacting with you. And once they accept that, you can start exchanging information with them. By the way, it just saves it saves trees too, right? Because you can submit up to 10 megabytes of information during that time period. I mean, I've submit substantial files to appeals to go ahead and get things done fairly quickly. So it's a great tool to go ahead and use. I just wish the IRS would put it inside of like the online account so I could use that for ones that I'm just not invited to, right?
Like so, practitioner portal basis.
Yeah, but just and we had the old. Everybody remembers 12, 14 years ago. We had the old EAR, right? And it was an electronic tool where we could go ask questions about a client, and somebody from accounts management would respond back. We don't have that tool anymore. I just want that one back, right? via my Tax Pro account, right? So I can start interacting with the IRS digitally. I think that's a great workflow. You know, we're back and forth working in IRS time rather than sitting and waiting on the phone.
And one other note is for anybody out there is e-faxing we still use a lot. I can document it, I've got time. But most of the situation when I don't have a person, if you're mailing, I've had to go in the last 6 months as far as calling in the practitioner hotline, asking them to put a note in the system that I responded in the mail because I'm not getting any verification without a real person to work with. Right. So document this. And then if I'm not hearing back, it's not a monthly thing, every 3 weeks, we have another follow-up. This is all adding billable time onto us for this client, but I don't want to take a chance of someone just moving forward with it because they say they never got anything. I want a history, so even if I go to appeals, I've got the whole history of we were reporting that we sent this, but we had no other choice but mailing it. By the way, I don't use the little green card when I mail things. I'm using priority mail. I've got confirmation mailing, all of these different things. So I'm telling that person later, oh, the IRS said I never got this. I've got all my backup ready to go to show you that we were complying with that.
We had a quiz question, which I think is related to this, which is what do you guys think? And I don't know who I have the answer. I don't know which one of you put the answer in, but you can answer it. What is the current average callback time from Taxpayer Advocate when I fax in a 911
It's me.
form? That's you.
I'll let you. I did the question. I'll let y'all.
Is it 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, or never? So
I was a little tongue-in-cheek on this one.
What's the answer?
So I'll tell you my average in my world and kick it down the line here, right?
This is close
So
enough.
ideally, it's supposed to be 3 days and up to whatever. I have had so many instances with Advocate that it's 3 to 6 months. I'm having to re-follow up. By the way, do not call the 911. They are being taught, at least in my world, they're being taught not to take cases because they're so overwhelmed. So if you e-fax in the 911 form,
They'll screen
that's the
them out.
request.
Yeah.
It gets accepted. It used to be without a problem. Now I'm having to refax that every month for 3 to 6 months just to get a case assigned. So the Advocate is no longer a place that you can immediately get to the front of the line with a levy situation, because these poor people are overwhelmed and they got cut, right?
Yeah, and how much cut has it been there? The Advocate took a big slash right
The
there.
Advocate took a big cut, and I think that Advocate in healthy times at the IRS is a real safety valve. I mean, they are able to cut through the red tape at the agency, but that's what I'm hearing as well. Those case advocates are overwhelmed right now. So the normal place that you go is, they're swamped there too, and that's kind of symptomatic across the IRS right now.
Yeah,
I
you
have
see.
a question because I have to get AI into every session, and it just seems like the opportunity right here is why not help augment that team with AI? There could be simple questions that are just that come in all the time, and it gets filtered, and the robots can answer it.
Well,
Did we just
it's
cut
not
the budget?
question. Yeah, it's not questions really. The Advocate, and we should. Let's step back for the Advocate for a second. So the average Advocate, in the IRS good days, they handled 80 to 100 cases. During the pandemic, it got to 130, 140. When we start losing, they're holding 180, 200 cases, right?
can't handle it.
And they're all problems. They're all significant problems. Now, to the Advocate's credit, Aaron Collins figured out that maybe we should. I need to get ahead of this thing, and they started specializing. So they're not using AI, but they're basically taking
Segmenting it, right?
For the most part, they're coding what the primary issue is, and then they're taking it and shipping it to certain areas. So what a lot of us are feeling right now is this reshuffling from the Advocate's office, which is still going on. The SLA is 5 days, right, Terry? The taxpayer advocate has to respond back within 5. I haven't said 5 days in. I haven't seen 5 days since the beginning of the pandemic.
Correct.
So I think it's more like 5 weeks, but the big thing is it may be never. Right? And so you got to follow that. Remember, 911, where is it recorded anywhere on a transcript, on an account? It's not. So you have, it's one of those things you got to verify.
Okay,
on.
then can AI help the CPA follow up so we don't have to keep remembering?
Reminders for sure. Now, what I will tell you is that, and we can talk about transcripts here in a second, is tax professionals need to start using more IRS transcripts to stay off the phones, right? And there are software programs out there that use some AI, but use a lot of just kind of learning of that data to go ahead and keep you off the phone and notify you with transactions. Now, let me give you some context here. 5 years ago, Tax Pros, we downloaded about 80 million transcripts a year. 2024, we downloaded 1.47 billion
So
transcripts.
incredible. Just the jump.
All right, so what does that mean? Is that because all of a sudden, there's more tax problems? No, there's less actually than there was back in 2019. But what taxpayers realized during the pandemic is that transcripts have so much information. If I have continuous access to these transcripts, the IRS keeps enhancing them. By the way, any of you know this past year, your wage and income transcript for an individual is now the first version's available during tax season, right? It's during March 31st, before April 15th, right?
But
First
not
time
fully
ever.
populated.
Not fully populated.
Yeah,
you want to
so-
check with the one but it gives you a great head start,
start.
right? So use transcripts, use a lot of these tools. They can notify you. A lot of times I see a lot of tax firms getting copied on notices. You want a first indicator that something's wrong on a client, a notice comes, right? Some adjustment going on. So Form 8821, if you haven't gotten to know Form 8821, the tax information authorization, I suggest you get to know it, right? Because that's where you can get copied on your client's notices for the next 7 years, have access to your client's transcripts for the next 7 years through the IRS's transcript delivery system. It's a great tool. IRS is encouraging the use of this just to get you off the phone lines, right?
Okay, we got to stop because people are going ballistic that we haven't given them a CPE code.
Yeah, exactly.
And CPI code.
We're ready. We're ready.
Ready?
We're ready.
Ready?
Cheers. Yeah,
Here's your
cheers.
first
Cheers.
CPE code for this session.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Terry.
They're like,
Cheers.
I've been here for 14 hours. I want my CPE.
Can we give 2 more codes right away? I mean, I think we just cheers up. Oh, no, we got to wait.
We could do that.
Sorry. So your note on AI, and we were chatting about this earlier.
I mean, I'm half joking, but I'm not.
No. It's a
Yeah.
great question. So I think a lot of people are going to remember all the funding they got a few years ago. However, you made the great point in our prep that a lot of it went to customer service, real people. And then there's been major funding cuts. So half that money is gone. The intention was to roll into technology with some of that money in the next phase. And it's been cut as these bills have come out in the last 12 to 16, 18 months. So you need that money because you're absolutely right. If they could invest in that and upgrade the systems, AI would come in and help with some of this. But they're not there yet. They don't have the funds.
But I am reversing it like that because it's like, we've been talking about how, like, for example, with document intake, how different tools can help with that and make it better so you're not all over the place. But now this is my own problem. The onus is on me to follow up because the IRS isn't doing a good job. So I'm just thinking, are there any tools? Like, instead of just being like, this is just what it is and it stinks and suck it up, buttercup, like, what can we do to help ourselves?
It's practice management. I think someone mentioned earlier about the reminders. Like if I've got to follow every 3 weeks because I haven't got that something, remembering that or doing that in a spreadsheet, using some of the vendors we've talked about the last 2 days to help me manage that, manage the clients. When you're a small practitioner, you're not doing a lot of rep, you can remember all this. But if you're really moving your practice this way because there's a lot of opportunity here. And by the way, I thought with the May cuts to the revenue officers, I'd see a downturn. It has exploded mostly with non-filing people as they hammer on them. You made that great point when we were prepping too. I've seen an amazing amount of work, and that's great work to add to your practices. You haven't filed in 5 years? Great, let me help with that. It can be great off-season work, but now your volume increases and the practice management's critical.
And Terry, you saw a lot of the AI changes at the IRS too. What's some of your insights from there too?
Well, the AI thing is, it holds a lot of promise, but part of the problem is the IRS has been underfunded on technology for several decades. And part of that's on the IRS. I mean, any government agency could be doing a better job of managing its IT resources. But the core issue is for the agency for years, they had to focus on the immediate task at hand, big tax law changes, making changes to the system. And the problem is the technology, that kind of core base of information, there's a lot of different systems. The AI thing on the surface, oh yeah, it ought to be able to, take care of issues. It has the promise, but it's like the document upload tool and these other ones.
Right.
It takes time. And then for me, that's one of the concerns about the budget cuts to the IRS, is that you got a sample of what technology improvement can do to smooth the experience for tax professionals and taxpayers. Well, that's now been interrupted. So adding things like AI, it's simpler on the compliance side if you're like trying to look for audit trends and things like that. But putting it in on that customer service operation is going to take some time, I think.
Very fair.
Yeah, and I think, Terry, you agree. I think the early use cases were more an audit selection to try to drive down some no change rates. And I saw the TIGNA study earlier this year that showed that the IRS didn't really do a great job on the partnership selection there. So I think they're in the learning stages of a lot of the AI tools that are out there. I mean, honestly, I think we're pre-AI. We just need a digitization for the most part, right? Like getting rid of the paper for the most part, and then getting taxpayers online to their online accounts. What always surprises me is I can go in and I can log into my bank or I can log into one of my financial institutions and I get all the information that I need right there. But if I log into my IRS online account, I don't get a big green button that says I'm in compliance. There is a actual report deep in there that's actually called a compliance report, but you have no idea what the scope of what it's looking at. So there needs to be a lot more built into these online tools. Now, I will give the IRS a lot of credit. They have, in the last 3 years, done a substantial improvement in terms of online account features and the Tax Pro account. So if you're a tax professional out there and you have not logged into your Tax Pro account and started utilizing it, register your CAF number with it, right? Your CAF number, right? And then you start seeing all your authorizations, you start seeing information on your clients. This is where the IRS is going, right? And now we've seen some stumbling blocks this year, Terry, right? Because of lack of funding and shutdown, right? And such. But this is where the IRS is moving to. Get digital first, get off the phones, right? Get more and more taxpayers to online accounts. The IRS's big problem here is, like in most software companies, is adoption. Only 25% of taxpayers actually have an online account, right? And so that needs to increase. And a lot of those are soft online accounts and such like that. So our number one use as tax professionals, why we want our clients online, is we want them signing our authorizations online, right? So, but unfortunately, the IRS is not many taxpayers utilize that method. We're still on the signature or upload or fax it to the IRS.
And that online account is also a great defense against identity theft. I mean, the identity thieves are still out there. I mean, I encourage your clients to get signed up for that. And, you know, inside the IRS, I mean, people may think the IRS isn't concerned about making these technology improvements. People inside the agency see the progress that's been made with the digital tools, and they realize that more needs to be done. It's just a question of being able to do it with staffing and funding.
Mm-hmm. And you see a ton of improvements this year with transcripts, right, alone, right? New business entity transcript out there if you haven't used it, you know, wage and income earlier in the year, more return transcripts for things like 1041s and 94X series. Even the 94X series from 2023 and forward, it's got amended information. That's historical for the IRS. So this giving more information to taxpayers and to their tax professionals is the key to keeping us off the phone. It's the key to voluntary compliance too. If you don't have the good information, I mean, basically you're calling the IRS or trying to figure it out or guessing, right?
Can we also roll the electronic into payments? I mean, sometimes it's basic, but hitting on direct pay, right? Stopping mailing checks. It'd be great. You mentioned the bank option that if I could go online and set up a direct debit, my client has an agreement, they're ready to go, but the direct debit system, the form 433D, another one that can take 3 to 6 months. You actually get the letter. If you ever get the letter back from direct debit saying, we've received it, we're hoping to start it next month, but don't call us for 90 days if it doesn't happen. Yeah. I mean, they're even writing that into their letters, right? So clients are like, what do you mean? I can go into my bank and set up a direct debit like this, but you cannot do that today. So that's the next evolution, so we can send you money. Yeah,
you can kind of do that through the online payment agreement, right? And it's a little bit better, but Vaughn, you and I have talked, for tax professionals setting up using the online payment agreement, usually there's some other issue involved, so it's very difficult for us to actually utilize that tool. But I will tell you, 2/3 of all installment agreements set up right now, and right now, latest data point I said was there's 4.6 million taxpayers with installment agreements, and this number is growing, right? Because each year we're seeing, like this year, we're seeing a record number of balance due filers and such. So more and more are getting into payment plans. But the online payment agreement, if they can use that tool, 2/3 of all taxpayers, or 2/3 of all agreements initiated last year went through this tool. It can be used to set up this direct debit, but it also just get off the phone with the IRS by using that tool.
Anytime you can.
And it's actually available through the online payment agreement is actually available for your client when you have an authorization through your Tax Pro account too. So it's another tool that you can go ahead and utilize. That's one of the most common post-filing interactions, setting up that simple installment agreement with the IRS.
Okay, we'd like to take another brief break and show the second CPE code on the screen. This is cheers.
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 End of day. End of day.
You get to
All
see
right.
the third
End of
one.
day.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is
no
if you're expecting CPE or CE credit for this session, you'll want to record that code.
We've got a bunch of questions out here, so I was just kind
start doing that.
of glancing over
See
this.
if you want to ask any. He's practicing to be the moderator for
Oh,
next
no,
year.
I'm just here to help you. Someone just made a comment, and the struggles early on with ID.me is one of them, that, once you can get through that process, that's still the challenge. I found with ID.me, when telling clients to go through it, don't use your computer. It was based for your phone.
Yeah,
And if you
absolutely.
use your phone, it's so much more efficient to set that up.
And the good thing about, remember, it's gradual improvement at the IRS, continuous improvement. Terry, what was Secure Access, 20% success rate or something like that?
Yeah.
This one has over 80% success rate, but even my son who tried it couldn't get through to it either. So there's some anomalies out there, but 80, and it takes about 12 minutes last time I watch my son try to go through it and such. So ID.me. Unfortunately, your clients have to go do that. But every tax pro out here probably already has an ID.me because they're managing their e-file application, which requires the ID.me. So you already have access to all the IRS accounts, including your individual account, business tax account, tax pro account, and e-services account.
Y'all's experience with the IRS Practitioner Priority Service, right? There's been an evolution in the last few years of what they can do with you and what you can't. Some saying, look, I've always had good experience with them, but there's certain areas they're doing really well with, and there's certain areas they're struggling. Thoughts on that distinction today and where that's evolved?
Well, this is one of the things that was a priority before the budget cuts started coming. There was a recognition that we needed to get more talent inside the agency. And in my old area, we made a deliberate effort in the stakeholder liaison area to try bringing people in with tax experience. And what you saw with those staff losses back in the spring, it really hit the new hires hard. So that meant the people that we were bringing in with tax expertise were some of those who got shown the door. You're also having those late career people retire. So that puts a lot of stress on the Practitioner Priority Service because those tend to be more senior, more experienced people. So that combination of losing staff and people retiring has really hit it because you just can't bring somebody in off the street and handle those complex questions. It takes time to build it up. And that's one of my concerns with these budget cuts is it's going to have a long-term effect, and it's going to take time to recover from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so what we're really talking about here from a practical measure, let's put our seat in this, in the PPS agents, right? This person's in accounts management, usually a couple of years on there, but the person, this is where technology, you can't divorce technology and people at the IRS. This person is looking at a screen that has basically been made 40 years ago. When I started with the IRS in 1987, the screens at the IRS now look basically the same. And they run through this really complex way of going ahead with a bunch of command codes that they have to know how to use and then read the codes on the other side of the screen. So while you're getting put on 3 to 5 minute holds to go check this sometimes it means the person's inexperienced. And you know that if you call the IRS after several times, right? And I get fooled every once in a while. The person, sounds more experienced than they are, and then I have to go vet the data against transcripts or call back again. But what they're doing is they're trying to interpret this data on the screen. And if they haven't had experience with that command code in a while, they may not know what they're interpreting, right? So that's the miss. So when the IRS, they talk about all this time the internal case management systems the IRS needs to upgrade. Yes, they do. Just to put it in a simple term so somebody who's been there for a year knows how to work with them, right? So my tip always here is if you can rely on transcripts, do so, right? Rely on IRS transcripts. Now, transcripts don't tell the entire story, right? Pending transactions on there, reasons for adjustments to return, statutes, all those types of things are not on transcripts. So sometimes you got to call, right? But you'll be more knowledgeable because you'll be able to ask the right questions because you have the knowledge of what's going on in the account transcript in there. But you can't divorce the technology from the PPS. That people working with very archaic tools. And I look at those screens myself because every once in a while I know Vaughn, I get them to send me one of those internal transcripts, a tax mod, and I just have to go through, document 6209, the big green thick book at the IRS and start trying to interpret all those things, right? Just to see if the person's got it right or not. And I can't believe how long it takes me to go do that. And I imagine that person on the other side of the desk there has probably got the same types of issues, if not more.
Yeah, you need like a Rosetta Stone. I wish
Or
everybody.
Or AI.
Yeah, I wish everybody could sit down with an IRS phone assister, and when we bring commissioners in to sit with the phone assisters frequently on the 1040 line, and they've got to toggle in between 5, 6, 7 different systems. And again, this is one of those kind of behind-the-scenes things where the decades of technology underfunding has prevented the consolidation of those systems and having a modern case management system like you might have with your bank or financial institution.
Yeah.
One of the questions that popped up was about mailing checks. So we've been bashing on mailing, as we should, because it's just so hard. If you have no choice but to mail in a check, the two things that come to mind for me is, first of all, if they've got multiple periods that they're paying, please don't put one big amount together because it won't always get posted correctly. And making sure that's a separate check per period, and the other one is your social, the form, and the period need to be written on the check. It's outlined on the coupons when you do your tax return, right? Same things when you're mailing payments, but the challenge with mailing payments is just the uncertainty of it. That's where I was coming back to direct pay. Going on, I can post a particular period, I get a confirmation number. It is posting 2 weeks or so to an accounts transcript on average, but that's where I'd fall in on that. But
Yeah, I think we're going to be mandated into electronic transmission with the IRS here. But Vaughn, you and I in our post-filing, we are stuck with checks, right? Because we do designated payments and things like that against certain types of balances and certain types of taxes when we represent our clients and such. So staying away from it. I mean, IRS direct pay, I've had good success with direct pay.
Yeah,
I've got some complaints on it. Like, I'd love for my client to be able to set up estimated tax payments at the beginning of the year and go in one session and set up 4 different estimated tax payments. He can do 2 a day.
2 at a time.
2 a day. So I got to go 2 today and 2 tomorrow. My client's going to forget and all. So there is some improvements that can go on there. Those are in front of the IRS though. They're in front of the IRS right now. So sending those recommendations through your stakeholder liaison is always a great thing to go ahead and do, so that you can go ahead and get that in front of us. By the way, more of us say those things to the IRS and give these recommendations. They hear it from more of us. Guess what? They make changes. They listen to these stakeholder liaisons, right? So I stay away from paper, right? Stay away from paper.
So I have a client, though, who insists on paying with a paper check, sending it certified, getting the date stamp, and her position is they won't even open this for 2 months. So I still have the money in my bank. Yeah. But whenever they do, they've got the date on it. So.
Well, the one priority the IRS does is they open those envelopes and they get those checks out very quickly.
Unless you're not sending it to the right address. Right?
But I think the assumption is if I put the coupon in, I'm good. But they've got to write the information. Assume they're going to just the check and the coupon are going to get separated at some point. So putting that info on the front of the check, social, the form, and the period is critical. You made a note. Here's a great tip that we've been running into the last 3 or 4 months. I don't know why it's an issue now in direct pay. If you're paying a balance due, and then you go to the next drop down, 1040 is the second choice. The first choice says 1040 healthcare. So now we're getting lots of requests to move payments from 1040 healthcare the wrong place. I wish they had put 1040 balance due first. Right. I'm not sure where that comes from an efficiency standpoint. A good tip, right, to move that to number 1.
Yeah, and by the way,
be careful.
Here's the problem that because the IRS will not automatically move that payment. You have to call them to move that payment, right? So by the way, my son, who can't get through ID.me, made the same mistake when he paid his taxes this past year, right? So yeah, I saw that
Terry,
problem
we're preaching to the choir, Terry.
Well, this is the thing, and this has been my mantra while I was in the IRS, as I got more familiar with the tax community. There's not enough expertise inside the IRS who understands what taxpayers and tax pros go through, and that one is a simple programming thing. Yeah. But whoever programmed that didn't sit down and think about what the user was going to go to. So I mean, this is one of those little things, but little things like that add up and add pressure onto the whole system. The phone lines, somebody's going to call in to try correcting that. So I mean, this is where you kind of get into this Gordian knot of problems. And for me, that's just like you need more tax insight.
That was impressive.
We like that phrase.
I got to even look that up. Sounded great.
Cheers on that one.
Cheers to Gordian knot.
Cheers on that one.
All right, we got some more questions. Do you want to go for it?
All right. Moderator in training is putting me back to work. How long is it taking the IRS to process paper file returns when e-file is not available?
We're getting a lot of paper file questions.
So there's a section on the IRS.gov called, and if you search IRS operations in Google, you'll go to it, and it will tell you processing times on paper returns. It'll actually tell you the 28, 48, 88, 21 current processing times with CAF also. So go wear that out. I don't know whatever it says now. I think that last time I looked that they were doing September returns.
Historically it was 8 to 12 weeks, but we're not seeing that now.
Yeah, the shutdown put like,
And that's
yeah,
fair, right?
Yeah.
Multiple weeks behind.
Yeah, and you know, we ought to talk about non-filers and late filers too, also, because they kind of fall into the same problem of them filing paper and such like that. But it's taking the IRS a while here, just simply because of post-shutdown, to go ahead and process those returns. And by the way, they all go through a little bit of scrutiny, a little bit more scrutiny though, and a little bit, you know, potential more error rate. Obviously, get rid of the paper, e-file if you can and such. But I think it's September is what they're working right now. The other correspondence is what I'm worried about. Like, that's stuff you and I deal with, Vaughn. Like, if you're just sending in correspondence to the IRS, they didn't work any of that in the shutdown, right? And so they're working. Yeah. So from my perspective, you know, like, one thing that we have to write in a lot on is negotiated collection agreements, penalty abatement requests and such like that, where, you know, 843 or not, whatever, the IRS is still working stuff that they've gotten back in May and June, right? So if you're feeling it out there, we're feeling it too, right? Like, the delays that we're seeing in terms of how long does it take is all been extended. It's not as bad as 2019 though, Terry. I think, Terry, the 2019, the IRS basically closed off tax practitioners for 35 days during the beginning of tax season. At least now CAF was open, right? So we could file authorizations during that time period, actually acquire transcripts, and that cut down the amount of questions we had in this backlog of questions that we're trying to get through to PPS, because I was able to get through PPS the last few weeks fairly simple. Business one a little bit more difficult than the rest. Automated collection, that was open during the whole time period. Obviously, correspondence exam, CP 2000, those were closed and such. But the IRS was generally, for a tax practitioner, pretty friendly during the shutdown for the most part. No campus enforcement during that time period, no liens, levies, no substitute for return filings on non-filers. Field collection, field audit was basically closed except for those high priority cases and such. So for the most part, the IRS, when they're, you know, incapacitated at some point in time, have done a pretty good job of kind of throttling that back. Well, that's going to end, right? That's going to end, right?
I think that operations page for practitioners who aren't familiar with it, that's a great place to go, but it's going to give you an idea of time frame. That's also going to help you with your clients to help manage expectations on things. And the other thing is, you know, one of the tips for the upcoming tax season, anything you can do to avoid an amended return is going to be important. Those are really time consuming for IRS employees to input. I mean, it can take 45 minutes per amended return, and you can see that backlog potentially grow a lot if there's problems during the tax season. So, you know, I think a lot of taxpayers, hopefully they've got everything right before they send it in the upcoming tax filing season.
We're going to ask our panelists for more tips about what to expect in the upcoming tax season, but first, we'd like to display the third and final
here we go.
CPE code for this session.
This is the final one for everything,
Final one
right?
for the whole
Like, is it too much
conference.
Yeah,
pressure?
wow.
No, I got to do it. I got to come
Do
through.
it. He's going to do it.
There you go.
I even had to get a
You've
little flourish.
officially lost your job. No.
I know. First he takes the
Wait a minute, that was a
moderator,
setup
then he
then.
takes
That
the
was, I
bell.
didn't know that's where I was leading.
Congratulations. See you next year.
Wrapping up the mail thing, 941s. Working with a processing partner who will help you in e-file. There are some that are better than others, but get into e-filing 941s. It's harder than it is for 1040s and returns in general, but we're talking about the mail challenges. Please start thinking ahead. I know you're heading into tax season and it's not the best time, but at least next summer start planning that out. Find ways, if you're still processing payroll, to find a partner who can help you e-file those, because that is another source of challenge at the moment.
I mean, also, I was thinking this, and then an audience member said it. You have something that says IRS on it. You have a check with your Social Security number on it. Like, I mean, isn't that just like setting it up for people to steal their identity?
And that's a huge part. You nailed it.
Yeah.
Let me. I worked on identity theft issues a lot at the IRS. If you have a client that's concerned about putting a social on a check, your social's already out on the dark web.
Yeah.
So that paper check is actually one of the safest things that I think, you know, you're not going to have somebody in Eastern Europe see what's on that check. They've already got the Social Security number. So, I mean, for me, that's kind of an old way of thinking.
And if you don't put the social in the check, the IRS is going to have a problem posting the payment.
Yeah.
Because it could easily get separated from the coupon. That's where we keep plugging direct pay, because it's secure, you can put all that information in, and you don't have to log into your ID.me account to make a payment. You can authenticate yourself from a previous tax return just with your basic info and make a payment directly.
Someone asked, do we need a certain authorization on file to submit a payment through direct pay on behalf of our client?
You can do direct pay on
yeah.
behalf of you with a 2848 now.
no.
I believe it's 2848 is
Yeah.
required on that.
Okay.
I checked that. I'm not look at
I
you're
do
gonna
it, so.
on Tax Pro account. In Tax
it
Pro
works.
account, there is a make a payment now feature on there, and I believe it requires a 2848. I'm not sure if it.
Am I allowed to
80/20.
say something out loud about this? Because if a tax preparer has all the authentication information for their client to make it through the basic system, even if you don't have a 2848.
That's
If
true.
you walk right through it, I know people are telling me, and I know they're doing it, and they're helping their clients make payments through
Right.
direct pay without
Yeah,
having
yeah.
I helped one client. I sat next door and helped her
Correct.
set up
Yeah.
the ID.
If you're doing their
got
tax
me,
return, you
and
have what
then
you need.
I got all the information.
Exactly.
That was just a really odd feature for the that was the latest feature in the Tax Pro account is you can pay something for your client. I was like,
I mean, it's actually fairly efficient.
yeah, it's efficient,
And,
but
you
I
know,
was
they
kind
just-
of
they
like,
send a
I don't
notice to
do
the
that.
client.
Do you
Well,
do that?
Payment
so
was
there is a liability challenge, which there was a question that we saw in here too about
Yeah.
2848, the power of attorney, versus filing the 8821. You've been championing that. I love where you're
Yeah.
coming from it, but can you talk more about the liability difference between the 2848 power
Yeah.
of attorney, which gets you all the same info?
Yeah.
I just
remember. Yeah,
weigh in.
they both give you access to your client's
Correct.
confidential information, but. The 8821, anybody can be on 8821. My wife's a medical technologist. When her mother was passing away, just before she got an 8821, was able to get her tax information with it. It's not required to be a tax professional. Matter of fact, a tax firm can be on there to cover any of its employees. It just limits them. They can't use the transcript delivery system. When you're getting to representation, that is a 2848. From the IRS's perspective, and being in IRS enforcement for 19 years, I can tell you this, what you say in front of the IRS is what the taxpayer is saying. All right, so you are the taxpayer. So I don't use 2848s unless I have an engagement and I'm very specific on what I'm representing my client for. If not, the 8821 gives me everything I need. I get copied on notices, I get access to transcript delivery system, whatever I want to go do for the next 7 years. So I use the 8821 a lot in situations where I'm not representing. Sometimes I'll use it to go scope my client's information because I do a ton of representation like Vaughn. I'll use the 8821 first, and when we decide that I'm going to represent them, I'll move to the 2848, right? And we'll have an agreement. Here's what I'm representing you for, and here's specifically what I'm doing for. But general uses of 2848 without an engagement letter, without, not a best practice, right? Not a best practice. Also not a best practice is not to withdraw your authorization when it's done. Now, that's become...
Which one?
The 2848, even the 8821, if it's no longer your client, remember you have access to their information for 7 years, right? So you want to withdraw all these authorizations when you're done with your client, and that includes other people in your firm also. It's very easy to do that now. You used to have to go take each individual, write it, fax it to the IRS.
The online system is great for that.
You use the Tax Pro account, and it's a one-click
so
withdrawal, right? So please go ahead and use that so that you're not authorized on counts that you shouldn't be authorized for. By the way, I got a call from a revenue officer last week, and not a very nice revenue officer, right? And this revenue officer said, and sent me a certified letter saying your client has not responded, right? And I tried to withdraw this authorization. I can't tell you how many times. The last revenue officer, I withdrew it with the person directly. It hadn't been processed. I went on that Tax Pro account, went withdraw right there, and I sent.
It's not a
obviously
perfect
note.
system. It doesn't always work, but it's a good way to go,
It's
right?
good, but again, you could see some of the exposure there. You have a responsibility for under Circular 230 for prompt dispositions of matters before the IRS, so you want to get rid of those.
Well,
when
and there's
not
case
needed.
history that practitioners have been sued for liability because they left their 2848 power of attorney in and they weren't communicating to this client that they thought they were done with, that they had notices that would affect them and they got levied. So you still have liability with that 2848 that you don't necessarily have with the 8821.
And the cool thing is you got an alternative.
Well, we know we could talk about this forever,
Yes.
but Gail,
Once down the road, final thoughts before we wrap this up. Terry?
Looking down the road to the 2026 filing season, I'd say, don't look for a filing season start date announcement until sometime in January. I think this is going to track similar to what we've seen in previous years. Start date will probably be right around the same time. I think a key thing for tax pros to kind of keep in mind is patience. IRS employees are feeling overwhelmed right now. The morale is tough. And when you're calling them and you have a tough call or you run into an RO who's had a bad day, I mean, just keep in mind, they're human too. They want to help taxpayers, but they're under an incredible amount of distress. And I think, again, avoid paper. This is the year you want the clients to get it right. You don't want to have an amended return.
Yeah, look, if you think IRS compliance is dead, think again, all right? IRS has got campuses. They can go ahead and they can send 200 million notices. Even during the worst part of the pandemic, they sent 170 million notices to taxpayers. So compliance is coming back. It's not dead, even though what you hear. If I was giving you one tip this year to stay off the phones with the IRS, I would file an 8821 for every one of my clients, and I would make sure I had access to the transcript delivery system, so I would stay off the phone and I would be able to get information directly from the IRS's transcript delivery system, which is good information, so I don't have to call the IRS.
Just real quick, every year we seem to have questions and talk about offers and compromise. So really quick tip here. You can lose a lot of time with prospective or current client talking about all the positive and negatives in an offer. The simple thing is offers are getting harder and harder. Look, house equity is through the roof. So all you got to do is start a conversation and end it on an offer is, what are your assets? Oh, look at that. Your house equity is more than you owe in taxes. Mm-hmm. This is off the table. And you're done and you don't lose 2 hours you can't bill for.
Wow.
Boom.
Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much.
Cheers.
And
cheers again.
Cheers again.
Cheers,
Don't go away yet.
Cheers.
Hold on.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers again.
There we go.
Yeah.
And almost
All right.
500 people that responded were here with us all 4
500
That's incredible.
40-hour warriors.
Wow.
That's amazing. Okay. You might think that it's just 5 of us sitting at this desk every hour, a few people changing seats every time. We have 3 cameras, 3 camera operators, a floor manager here. We have a whole studio full of sound and video, and I'm not even sure what all they do, people here. We also have our team at CPA Practice Advisor here, and we have a lot of speakers who've opened champagne, I can see them over there, who have hung around for this last session. So anybody who is not needed doing cameras or anything else, we'd love to have you all just file in and fill in behind us while I roll the credits.
Where's our friends?
That includes the person who did my makeup, which is a miracle.
We have 2 makeup artists, yeah.
Come on in, people.
Okay,
Yeah. Come
so
join
while
us.
they're filing in, here are the credits. We have a lot of people to thank. First of all, Barry Strobel, our publisher, Isaac O'Bannon, managing editor, Jason Bramwell, senior writer, Stoney Thomas, operations manager, Reagan Rogers, marketing and events, Scott Citron, traffic manager, Dave Wachtendonk, traffic, Denise Meyer, marketing and events, Alexandra DeFelice, extraordinaire moderator,
Superstar.
Jim Tumento, who did our website, Derek Diston, who's vice president above all of us. From Global Meet, the people that are sending this stream to your computers, John Bortscheller, Deanna Lucero, Catherine Chavez, and from AMS, all the people here at the studio who are making this possible. Cliff Caldwell, Robert Forer, I may be butchering names, I apologize. Larry Rodriguez, Forrest Eleuterius, Ty Osborne, Randy McDaniel, Tony Arant, John Snitker, Adam Cobbs, Matt Short, Phoenix Roberts, Diane Lowe, Belynn Parks, Ben Campbell, and the incomparable Margaret Stearns, who is the project manager here at the studio. Thank you all for making Ensuring Success 2025 possible.
There we go.
This is like the end.